I think the reason that I talk about the Machiavellian side of dating so much, and I find it so fascinating, is that I, in the course of my life, have met people who've been very successful in dating, right? Both men and women. And the people I've met who've been the most successful, and by that I mean they've dated the most, they've dated the most attractive partners, they have been the recipients of the most attention in the dating marketplace. They've all had one thing in common, and that is they've all pretty much been somewhat Machiavellian, okay? And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not sitting here cheering, saying, oh, isn't it wonderful if you're a bit Machiavellian, if you're a little bit of a game player, you tend to get better results out there. I'm not saying that at all, because I don't think it's a good thing, right? I think it's a bit of a sad thing, actually. I think it's a bit of a sad indictment of human nature that this is the case. But this is certainly something that I've observed, okay? Certainly something I've observed. And I think it's important to at least recognize that, even if you then say, okay, fine, I'm going to reject that. All right? And it's your right to reject a way of showing up in the world that doesn't reflect you. It is absolutely your right to do that if you want. You are quite entitled to say, look, I get the fact that people out there in dating, on the apps, okay, whatever, that they are these, some of them are manipulative, some of them are Machiavellian, some of them don't have good intentions, some of them don't have my best interests at heart. I get that, I understand that, but I'm not going to sink to their level. I'm going to be different, okay? It's completely within your rights to do that. You can do whatever you want, okay? You can live your life however you want. It's your life. And actually, if you do take that position, that's very admirable. That's actually very admirable. It's principled. But that doesn't mean that it's going to work well for you. Something can be principled and still fail. Something can be noble and still not strategically be the best course of action. And I think this is an important thing to bear in mind. And of course, it depends what you want, all right? It depends what you're looking for. There is a huge difference between the guy who is young guy living in the city, doesn't really want a long-term relationship, is looking for fun, okay? And he wants to have a number of just casual encounters, whatever, okay? That is a different proposition to the man who wants to settle down and he's looking for the mother of his children. Of course, those two things are different. Those two ambitions are different. And the approach has to be somewhat different, certainly in terms of choosing who the partner is, okay? Because it's a very different matter to be, okay, I want to have some fun tonight, so I'm going to go to this club on King's Road and I'm going to snort coke with an attractive woman there and I'm going to spend some time with her, right? That is a very, very different proposition to, okay, this is the woman that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with and she's going to have my children, obviously. So you have to think differently about the people that you're engaging with in those two scenarios, right? And there probably isn't crossover between the two, because somebody that you're just going to spend a bit of casual time with, necessarily you don't have to vet them as much as somebody that you're going to marry, okay? Pretty obvious, right? But how do you get those people to be interested in you in the first place? And I think this is where guys fall down, because they think, okay, so if I'm just looking at to have fun, if I'm just looking at spending time with frivolous party girls, set against I'm looking for a wholesome woman who could be the mother of my children. Guys think, and it's very logical, right? We're very logical people. We think, right, so therefore my approach to both of those scenarios has to be vastly different, okay? If it's the party girl, it doesn't really matter, okay? I could just be my outrageous, debauched self. If I'm looking for the wholesome bride-to-be, then I should show up as the wholesome groom-to-be, okay? I should be upfront, I should be on the level, I should be vulnerable, I should show her my whole self, good and bad, warts and all, and I should tell her when I'm feeling bad, I should cry on her shoulder. These are the sorts of things we might think, okay, that makes sense, because I want somebody who's going to be open and honest with me, who's going to be on the level with me, so therefore I'm going to be on the level with them, okay? That is logically how we think things should go. And I'm not saying it's wholly wrong, because it isn't, but this stuff is very nuanced. You have to think about, okay, that's fine, all of that's great, but what actually sparks attraction? Because in the first instance, the thing that is going to get your foot in the door, in both cases, is attraction, okay? For the most part. There is an exception to that, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But for the most part, really what you're looking in the first instance to do is to generate attraction. And attraction, and this is really, if there's one single topic that I cover on this channel above everything else, it is the nature of attraction, okay? Because that's the thing that really fascinates me. It's like, okay, what creates attraction between human beings? And unfortunately, it's not really the honest, open, I'm a great guy, I'm putting my cards on the table stuff. In general, it's not that. As laudable as that might be, that's not really what creates visceral attraction in women, as far as I've observed in my many decades on this planet, okay? It's just not. And the caveat that I mentioned is that at a certain point, women are looking to settle down themselves, okay? So this has been talked about a lot online, and sort of it becomes a little bit of a meme, it becomes a little bit of a stereotype. But broadly speaking, younger women, they're having a good time, they want to party, they want to explore, they want to experience different things. And so they are more drawn to the exciting guy, the good-looking guy, the guy with Model-esque cheekbones who doesn't call her back, all of that nonsense, right? She's more drawn to that in the early phases. And then later on, she starts to think, okay, well, all of this is great. I've had a great time with these Abercrombie and Fitch models who never called me back. But now I want to find somebody who's dependable and who I can build a life with, which is fair enough. Okay, so it is true that at that point, she will then start to screen for different things. She'll start to be more concerned with, okay, well, what's your job? Are you just a part-time model who sleeps on a mattress in his friend's flat and smokes weed all the time? Or are you somebody who works for a bank or in engineering and you're making good money and you can support me and the kids that I want to have, okay? It does start to become a consideration for sure. The problem though, so she is looking for those things. So yes, in theory, at some point, there is a point where you can come to the table and say, well, look, I've got this job and I make this money and I expect to get promoted in 2 years, so I'm going to make even more money and then we can buy an even bigger house, and isn't that a great proposition? There is a point at which you can come to the table with that kind of energy, okay? And people do that, and people find partners and they get married on that basis, okay? It happens, right? It happens all the time. But the problem that I don't think anyone's really solved is that demeanor, that way of coming to the table, still doesn't in itself spark attraction, okay? It sparks a sense of, this could work well, we could build a life together, this project could be successful. So let's do it, and let's plan and let's make this thing work. It sparks that. What it doesn't spark necessarily is, oh my God, I'm intoxicated by this man, I'm hopelessly in love with this man, I would travel to the ends of the earth for this man, okay? And that is a problem, Whether people want to admit it or not, that is a problem. And it's a problem because if the woman isn't engaged with you on that level, it means that the fundamental basis of your relationship is incredibly weak. Okay? In fact, the fundamental basis of your relationship is kind of dependent on you keeping that job, staying in that career, and providing that existence that you've promised at the front. And if you don't, the foundations crumble very quickly. Now, ideally, of course, you bring both of them to the table. Ideally, you bring, I'm an exciting, slightly hard to work out, kind of cool guy with great cheekbones, but also I have these other things, right? I also have this amazing career and I can provide for you and bring up your children and give them everything that you want and all the rest of it. Okay, ideally you bring both of them to the table at the same time. The challenge there, and this is a challenge for women as well as for men, is that the two things often don't coexist within the same guy, right? We have very, very stereotypically, very broadly speaking, we have the boring but stable career guy, okay? And then we have the exciting but deeply flawed bad boy over here who isn't good marriage material, okay? Do the two coexist in the same person? I've seen it several times in my life. It can do for sure. There are people who are extremely charismatic, have this kind of intoxicating energy around them, who have also been very successful in business or in their career. That combination does exist, but it doesn't exist very much. Okay, it doesn't exist very much, and so that's a problem, I think, for women, because, and I talk to women about this, and they will often, there's always this sort of, I have a female friend I talk to about this quite a lot, and she's always weighing up between, okay, he's really good looking, but is his career very good? He's a model, but he's not making that much money at the moment. Is he going to be able to provide for me, blah, 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 versus, okay, there's this dude over here, and maybe he's not as good looking, maybe he's not as witty or charismatic or exciting, but he's got a great career, so could that be a good option? And I think women are trying to find the person who has both of them to the most part possible. So, but for the guy, for you watching, you've got to think, okay, well, which side of the equation am I coming in at? Okay, which archetype do I represent? And if you represent the second, which is probably most guys, although there's another problem with this, which I'll try and go into in a minute, but if you represent the second, which is I am the stable guy, worked hard, good career, can provide, but you're not really ticking boxes on the other part of it, which is I've also got this panache, I've also got this vitality, I've got this intoxicating magnetic air about me. You've just got to be a little bit careful. Okay, you've just got to be a bit careful, because you've got to think, okay, so as and when I do meet somebody and she takes me on board for these qualities, that's great, but how much of it is really about you and how much of it is about the things that she thinks you can provide? Now, you might say, well, I don't really care. I've met her, she's a great woman, we're getting married. I'm happy. Okay, fine, I'm happy for you, that's brilliant. But you've got to understand that both of these things, ideally for the woman, both of these things coexist. And if you are lacking on the first bit, and this is the good thing about this, is the first bit can be trained. Okay, the first bit can be worked on, and that's actually what we work on with long-term clients, right? Because a lot of our long-term clients, they are very successful on the career side of things. They are very successful on the provisioning side. They're not as successful on the other side, and that's something that we can help you with, right? That's something that we can work on with you. But if you don't have the first side, and you probably know if you don't have the first side, because you're either not getting very many dates, or you are getting dates and then she ghosts, or you're getting that message the next day where she's saying, oh, you know, it was great to meet you, but I'm not really feeling the chemistry, all of that nonsense, right? If that's happening to you a lot, then maybe you lack the first bit and you've got the second bit. Okay, then we can help with that. If you lack the second bit, but you've got the first bit, then you've probably had this wild, crazy dating life, but maybe you're not And then if you're looking to settle down, that could also be a problem, okay? And we can also help with that, but that is more structural. That's more like, okay, well, you've got to knuckle down, and you've got to find something that and work on it so you can be successful, and then you can become more of the provisioning sort of guy. But I would anyway contend that the energy that you show up with on the first day, in those first interactions, is important, because it's then that attraction is ignited. And if you're not igniting that attraction, then you are in a little bit of a tricky spot, I would say. And fundamentally, you don't want to show up as somebody who seems to be a bit naive, as somebody who seems to be a bit of a mark, okay? I would say that's important. The other point I was going to make is that, of course, unfortunately, the second bit, the provisioning bit, I'm okay, I might not be the most wild and crazy exciting dude on the planet, but at least I've got this, at least I've got the stable job. Of course, that's all under threat now as well, isn't it? Because we see rising inflation, so wages are worth less across many Western countries. We see the incursion of AI and how that's going to affect everything. We don't really know yet, but that probably isn't going to be great news for a lot of jobs. We have got firms consolidating and merging and having to shed workforce, all right? We've got automation coming in, connected with AI, automation coming in, which is leveling out a lot of jobs. That side of things is becoming increasingly challenging as well. So this is another reason why dating is so difficult in 2026, why relationships are so difficult in 2026. And if you're being challenged from both ends, if you don't have the sort of the magnetism, the vitality at the front end, but you're also being challenged from this end because you're like, oh shit, I don't know how long I'm going to have this job, because increasingly AI is coming into the picture and at some point I might get forced out. You've got a double problem, okay? Which means that you're going to have to work doubly hard to find the solution to that. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this one. Leave a comment below, let me know what you think. Do subscribe to the channels, give me a like as well. I'll see you guys again very soon.